Betsy DeVos had a number of sessions with individuals who were either victimized by campus sexual assault or individuals who claimed that they were falsely accused of campus sexual assault. This is all part of her effort to reform Title IX and potentially roll back some of the protections that the Obama administration put in place for students who have been victimized for sexual assault. Now, earlier this week, DeVos angered advocates for victims of sexual assault by agreeing to meet with members of men's rights groups, which argue that men accused of sexual assault are treated unfairly by colleges under the Obama administration's Title IX guidance. The National Coalition for Men has a history of intimidating victims by publishing the identities of women they say made false accusations. Now, the other men's rights organization that was there is known as Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, also known as SAVE, and the Southern Poverty Law Center has actually listed them as a misogynistic organization. And honestly, I was really curious to see what kind of interaction that they had and what they shared with Betsy DeVos. Refinery 29 actually had a really great piece where they profiled one of the men who claims that he's been falsely accused of sexual assault by his own frat brothers. And so you don't hear about situations like that often. And he's saying, no, I actually don't want you guys to get rid of Title IX or the protections that the Obama administration put in place. But what he does call for is increasing the burden of proof that universities need to have in order to find someone guilty, right? Now, keep in mind, the way universities handle it is separate from the way criminal courts handle it, right? So this is really over whether or not a student should be expelled or reprimanded or face any consequences for alleged sexual assault. There's a lot more. It's a very complex, twisty-turny story, but I want you guys to jump in.
Okay, so I think I agree with where you're going with it. So if Betsy DeVos said, hey, listen, of course we have to take it into account and address sexual assault and rape on college campuses, of course. But some small fraction of cases are false accusations, and I say that because that's a fact. It's about 2 to 10% of accusations are false, according to the people who keep stats on it. Okay, so but it exists. So let me go meet with one of these groups, and then I would pick the group that is the least crazy.
They don't exist, unfortunately.
Well, I hear you on that. That's right. But so I wouldn't pick one that was on the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of groups that are misogynistic. The one that the National Coalition for Men, their founder, I read a quote from a couple of days ago on the show when she was considering doing these meetings. He said the Ray Rice thing. He's like, I'm not blaming victim
or victim blaming.
Victim blaming, but she agitated him, and that's why he hit her. What? If you saw that tape, I mean.
He knocked her out.
He knocked her out and couldn't care less. And she did, what do you mean agitated him? It's clear victim blaming. So these are bad guys that she's meeting with. If you wanted to actually address the issue and you did it in proportion to the scope of the problem, okay, all right. That makes sense. I don't want guys to be falsely accused of rape.
Yeah,
that's right.
Look,
but we're not doing it in proportion here. And the people you're meeting with are terrible guys.
Yeah, look, the sense that I got from the way that this all went down is that, her assumption or her perspective of this is that sexual assault victims are 50% and falsely accused are 50%. Right. So let's treat it like such, and I'll have my session with the sexual assault victims and then those who are falsely accused. But the reality is, look, no one wants anyone to be falsely accused, right? And it's counterproductive and devastating for everyone. Right, sure. But at the same time, you want to ensure that you tackle a problem that continues to grow on college campuses, and that is administrators kind of brushing these things under the rug and not dealing with them. And by the way, universities are not courts. They're not looking for criminality or to convict someone. That's for the criminal court system to decide. When it comes to universities, they have to decide whether or not it makes sense to move someone into a different dorm or expel someone. And in the vast majority of cases, according to the data, the person who's accused of sexual assault doesn't get expelled, does not get moved to a different dorm. They might get asked to take a counseling class, but that's it. Let me go into the details on that because I thought it was super interesting. We don't have a graphic for it, but the Washington Post looked at data at over 100 universities, and what they found was that very often, or more than often, they are not expelled from universities. Very often, they are told to take these counseling classes. But yeah, they're like, what these groups want, the men's activist groups, is they want it to be the same burden of proof necessary in criminal court. So guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And so the universities are actually saying that makes our job impossible because we can't prove that.
And it's already tough to prove in criminal cases, right? Which also we also need to revise how we conceptualize burden of proof for criminal cases. But I think back to that earlier point about this conversation, you can't center men in a conversation where men are the primary perpetrators of sexual assault on campus. And I think also, you can have multiple conversations about sexual assault. Two things can be true. There can be false accusations and there can be real sexual assault.
Right.
But to go first and then to frame these victims as equal to other victims of sexual assault, I think is problematic.
So, look, it's a tough balancing act for universities, and if I was running the Department of Education, I would think, look, how do I make sure that universities don't brush this under the rug, and they have an incentive to, because what they don't want their universities to get a bad name. And if there's a lot of sexual assaults reported at a university, then they get a bad name and less people apply, and it affects their funding and all that stuff. So I've got to stop that problem, because if someone is sexually assaulted on a college campus, we have to take it enormously seriously and make sure we get justice for that, and make sure that the victim doesn't have to face the person who did it, et cetera, right? On the other hand, when they go to actually adjudicate the case, I think beyond a reasonable doubt is too tough a standard in that context. Although I don't agree that it's too tough a standard in the criminal context. I think it's the right standard, but we could disagree about that. But in the college, but at the same time, I don't want the college to say, if there's any evidence at all, the guy's gone, right? No, you have to have some real standard, and maybe it's the same standard as a civil case, by a preponderance of the evidence, right? Because when you go to a criminal trial, you're taking somebody's freedom away. And if on a case like rape, then you're gonna go on a sex offender list, et cetera. I mean, that is as serious as you can possibly get. Now, removing somebody from college, ending their college career, is also super serious, but not to the same degree. And it's a different balancing act, because you really wanna protect sexual assault victims. And we have the stats. The overwhelming majority of people who accuse people of sexual assault, it actually happened. So, and you know that through the cases that have been adjudicated, et cetera, right? So it's not an easy balancing act, but you don't balance it 50-50, because that's just not the reality of what's happening on campus.
And what I'm concerned about is, even as they give this appearance that they're treating the situation as 50-50, which I think we all agree is kind of unfair given the statistics, behind the scenes, they don't even treat it as 50-50. DeVos's top civil rights chief, Candace Jackson, stirred outrage Wednesday when she told the New York Times that, quote, 90% of accusations fall into the category of, we were both drunk, we broke up, and 6 months later I found myself under a Title IX investigation because she just decided that our last sleeping together was not quite right. Now, she later apologized for that statement, but I mean, you apologize because you get criticism. You said something that you honestly believed, and that's a little troublesome, so.
Look, it's not like those cases don't exist. When I was going to school at Penn, we literally had one of those cases where somebody said 6 months later, one of the nights in our relationship, I didn't want to have sex, but we had sex, and he didn't know it, but I'm gonna call it rape now, okay? Now, I don't know all the details, and that was a long, long time ago, and maybe she had a point, but from the outside, it looked like, whoa, 6 months later, and the guy didn't even know it. So it's not like those cases don't exist, but for her to say that 90% of the accusations fall into that category is unbelievable. But that's their mindset, that's their perspective. It's a lot of BS. These sexual assaults don't actually happen, which is super ironic, because apparently Candace Jackson's also a sexual assault survivor.
Exactly.
But having gotten no empathy, just turns around to everyone else, is like, yeah, it happened to me, but I don't believe that it happened to you. 90% of the time I think you're making it up, even though the stats indicate it's the exact opposite. they're telling the truth 90 to 98% of the time. TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.